Hello everyone, welcome. I'm going to share with you some of the things I've been learning today, this week. Some people do not hear. It's not that they don't hear because nothing is being said. They don't hear other people crying not because no one is crying, sometimes crying their hearts out. They do not hear because they don't listen. And because they're not listening, they conclude that no one is speaking. No one is crying out. And they are blind as well as deaf, because they do not see what is happening around them. They're looking at the world, especially those in power, with as if it were just one eye. The eye of the world, the eye of self-interest, the eye of power, the eye of riches and success. And they only see themselves and their own self-interest because of that they conclude that their presumptions and their suppositions and their prejudices are the only sources of information. So they reject reality, what is happening around them. They are looking at the world with one eye, as it were, a jaundiced eye. And so this week I have been thinking about justice and and power and arrogance and conceit. And I have come to the conclusion, I think I always knew it, but I see it plainly now, that those who get to the top, the ones who exercise power, many times get there because of the lack of moral restraints, of what is right and what is wrong. Whether it is in politics or business or whatever it might be, if you decide not to take advantage to satisfy your own self-interest and your objectives and so on. Some people say, no, I can't do that, I can't say that, I can't go along this because it's just wrong, I can't do it. And that is a moral restraint many times on how much you can achieve in the world. If you don't have those moral restraints, it is easier to get to the top. You have no constraints. So what if it is wrong? It doesn't matter. So they get to the top and they look down or back at you over there and they say, well, that is what doing the right thing gets you. Here I am. And that enables them to get to the top in whatever objective they have. But I have come to realize that those I don't know whether I can call it qualities, those characteristics, those traits of character that enable them to get to the top much more easily than if you have moral constraints. Those same traits are going to make them self-destruct. I can see it very, very clearly now. Those same traits that enable you to be successful and to get to the top, disregarding right and wrong, they will eventually make you self-destruct, implode. This is what I mean. well, I was going to give you an example of political leaders, but I can't be very explicit here, as you can understand. But what made you become very powerful and enable you to do whatever you want? When you get to the very top, you continue to do that whatever you want, and so your power becomes you cannot, because you have always got away with it. Now you're going to continue to do so, and so you're going to necessarily abuse that power, because there is nothing there telling you this is right and this is wrong. So you're going to then abuse it, and that will bring you down eventually. I'm convinced of that. I'm looking at the situation like all of you, all of us are looking at the situation now in Palestine and Israel. And I thought about justice and how when you do things or believe things not based on a sense of justice, what you're dealing with is obviously your own self-interest, or perhaps ideology. It could be political ideology. Many people are talking now about how surprised they are in the political context of what is happening nowadays. That, for example, many people who were complaining, for example, about the woke ideology and about other wars, whatever, seem to have turned on a dime now and are very willing to censure and not allowed to speak those who, for example, are crying out for justice for those people who are being bombed and have nowhere to go. And they think that that is somehow acceptable. And so it is very obvious to me that when they were dealing with the other, what they considered injustices, they were not based on a sense of justice. They were based on a sense of power and self-interest. Because if you always look at it, if you put justice at the very center, you're going to be very consistent all the time. You don't turn 180 degrees all of a sudden. The Stoics, back in antiquity, in, Roman times, for example, the Stoics were a sort of, if we can put it in modern terms, a secular religion, as it were. They taught temperance and prudence and natural qualities. But Seneca, many philosophers. But even all the way back to Aristotle, he was talking about always taking the mean, the middle ground, the via media. In other words, to never to get into extremes. And that was a good secular lesson. But justice is something else. It's a moral judgment that you make. When I was little, I think I shared with you why am I talking about justice? It's just that it's something that has stayed with me throughout my life. It's something that I depended on it in my early childhood. Some of you know, those of you who have been with me for a while, I have shared certain experiences of my childhood, and you will forgive me if I mention it again, because there are many people who are new to this channel. It's growing a little bit, actually. You know, I have people who are following it from India and Pakistan and the Philippines, and oh my goodness, you know, and so there are many people who haven't heard my early videos talking about my early life. So I'm just going to give you an example. It was, as my followers know, it was an orphanage. Yes, I was raised in an orphanage by nuns. Okay, so the sense of justice, that it was absolutely imperative in us. It's not that we were philosophizing about anything. It's just that everyone had to and was treated absolutely the same. Why am I telling you this? Because in a situation where you depend on grown-ups entirely, there is no one else out there adjudicating what is going on. If a little thing like treating one child better than the other, something like that, okay, it brings to you, develops in you a sense of, you know, in a child's language, that is not fair, and a child suffers greatly if something is not fair. I can tell you honestly from the bottom of my heart that throughout my childhood, I don't want to get emotional now, why am I getting there? Anyway, I never actually suffered injustice. Never. I was thinking about this because I knew I wanted to talk about it, and I was trying to be fair and find an instance, something that I could say, oh, that was, I couldn't. I can't pinpoint to one particular example when one little girl was treated more fairly than the other. And we were all the same, everyone was the same, you know, the rules were for everyone, no predilections, nothing of any kind. And I tell you this because a child does not suffer because no one loves him or her. If you have never known that closeness, it's not something that you miss. It's not something that provokes or brings unhappiness. It is not having love. Is when that love can be given but is withdrawn. And the child feels that when you withdraw something that you can give, that is what creates unhappiness. In our case, love of affection was nothing that we were worried about. We were just there. So instead of love, or lack thereof, what was at the center of our being was justice. And so it has stayed with me all these years. When I'm considering something that happens in politics, whatever it is, my main reaction always is this just? It's not that I actually make a conscious effort to say, to think about justice. It just comes. It's just there. Is this just? It's almost automatic. And that is the position I take. So if it is unjust. It regardless of who it is, the people that you're talking about, the political issues that you're talking about. That is what comes to my mind first. This is not just. And I can't help it. Since I am not a saint, I don't always follow my conscience. So sometimes my will and my self-interest will come into conflict with that moral judgment of justice. And I may opt, and I have opted many, many times, for my own self-interest. But I know because my moral upbringing, my sense of justice is always there. And I recoil sometimes at people who want to be good but are not just. Because you're going to go, it is my opinion, that you're going to go the wrong way. You cannot be good unless you are just first. If you try to be good without any sense of justice, you're going to go along the path of sentimentality, of do-goodism, as it were. It's going to take you along the wrong path. It is my belief. So justice has to be at the center. And so because of this, I fear and I cry at the moment for the Palestinian people. I cannot help it. There is something else that I have come to understand also. That when, as a Catholic, I was taught, the Bible, and you go to Mass, you hear the Gospels and so on, and you hear it and you accept it and so on. And then throughout life, you don't know and you doubt, or even if you don't stop to doubt it, you are going to lead your life according to other prescriptions. And the thought came to me about that passage in the Bible of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, when he says, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the land of the earth." Yeah. So throughout my life, I thought, well, yes, that's very good. But obviously the meek, that is the humble of spirit, or those who have a sense of right and wrong, it is obvious to me that they are not the successful ones most of the time. And so it is very difficult to always go according to what Jesus preached, because in the world as it is, you know that you're going to be left behind because of those moral values. In the 17th century, there was here in England, there was we would say now a political party, but it was called the Diggers or the Levelers. I think I mentioned that in another video sometimes. And they were the peasants who were protesting against the enclosures when the gentry and the nobility took the common land. And one of their leaders, I remember reading this a long time ago, said, "Why can't the poor have a little bit of heaven here on earth as the rich do?" And so throughout our life experience, certainly in my case, I find that yes, the meek shall inherit, but while you are in this world, you're not going to inherit very much at all. But then, you see, with age, I don't know, I've been thinking about it, and I seem to come back to those early lessons and then think, oh my God, this is actually true. This is actually true. Because what I said at the beginning, you may not win, you may not be as successful if you have moral constraints. But at the end, truth prevails always, and those who run faster, as I said, self-destruct. I really do think that this is right, this teaching from Jesus. So I looked it up. I went to the Sermon of the Mount. Don't run away now. The Sermon of the Mount, and because it's making sense to me now. You know, as I grow older, I see that those early lessons are actually true. And in this Sermon of the Mount, which we call the Beatitudes, the Catholics, let me see if I can read it, because this is in such tiny, tiny, tiny letters. And seeing the multitudes, he went up into a mountain. And when he was sat down, his disciples came unto him. And opening his mouth, he taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the meek, for they shall possess the land. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. There are many others. But, you know, you read this when you're a child or you hear it at Mass and so on, and you say, well, yeah, you know. But I think eventually that comes to pass. Because the others who are so full of themselves will abuse that power, and they will perish, they will self-destruct. I thought, well, how, since Jesus was said very, very plainly that he had not come to break the law or to change the law or to alter the law, but to fulfill it. I went to the Old Testament, and here in the Psalms, Psalm 36. Be not emulous of evildoers, nor envy them that work iniquity. For they shall shortly wither away as grass. You see, that's true. That is what I'm saying. And as the green herbs shall quickly fall. Trust in the Lord and do good, and dwell in the land, and thou shalt be fed with its riches. Delight in the Lord, and he will give thee the requests of the heart. He goes on, and then he says, envy not the man who prospers in this way, the man who does unjust things. Cease from anger and leave rage. Leave rage. Have no emulation to do evil, for evildoers shall be cut off. But they that wait upon the Lord, they shall inherit the land. For yet a little while, and the wicked shall not be, and thou shalt seek his place, and shall not find it. But the meek shall inherit the land, and shall delight in abundance of peace. The sinner shall watch the just man, and shall gnash upon him with his teeth. I was listening to a video. It was, I don't remember the name, but it was a Muslim talking about what is happening today. And I don't know anything about Islam. All I know is that in regards to Jesus, that they accept him as a prophet. And I found that, well, what he said was that they do respect him. And when he was interviewing someone, and when the name of Jesus came up, he would say, Jesus, blessed be his name, or something like that. You know how, I'm speaking to non-Muslims now, you know how Muslims always start with a prayer or a recitation, you know, blessed be God, or something like that. And I was surprised that every time that he mentioned Jesus, he was saying, blessed be his name, or something equivalent. I don't remember exactly. So it seemed that they do accept his teachings, perhaps, or certainly treat him with respect. So I would say to any Muslim or Palestinian of a different faith from mine, but nevertheless, that both from what we call the Old Testament, the Jewish law and Jewish history and law, and from the teachings of Christianity, that also speaks to you, that sense of justice. I know you know that. Because Jesus was thinking of everybody, of all humankind. And though you're suffering now, you know, the humble of spirit and the ones who suffer injustice might very well inherit the earth or the land. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that today. Thank you. Bye-bye.